You all can see my screen, correct? Tara, you're raising your hand.
Yes. Yes.
Just want to jump in and say we're going to hear from Jonathan about a few more applications, bringing this down to sort of reality of plans and programs that we're actively working on now from the research realm that we've been in. And then I'll wrap it up with some more conclusions at the end.
Great. Thanks, Tara. Yeah, it's really great to hear all the innovative research and pieces where the tool's moving. I have 3 applications that we've been involved in as of today. So these are very real applications that we wanted to highlight and just show some of the flexibility and some of the new use cases that we're seeing. So Southwest Washington Regional Transportation Council, I think we had somebody on from there. This is an example where this is an iteration and an evolution of an existing VE model. And this is exciting because for at least our awareness, this is the first time that the model has been built for one application. In this case, Portland Metro, who there's a lot of folks here, and Teo was involved in the development of the original model. It was designed in a way that it was encompassing of the commuter shed, which is great. That's the way it should be designed. But it included areas north of the Columbia River that was outside of the jurisdiction of Oregon. That was really why the model was being built for. And so now the state of Washington has legislation, HB 1181, that talks about VMT targets that different regions and counties are supposed to consider how to achieve, municipalities or jurisdictions are supposed to achieve VMT per capita reductions. So comp plans need to account for that in their Growth Management Act. And so VE has been identified as a resource that these communities can go to start to identify all those different levers of how to achieve those VMT targets. So in this case, we started with a more or less a good detail from up here in Clark County, but we've added 120 new B zones into the geography, added a lot more resolution to it, and we're in the process of verifying all the inputs with that additional resolution. The nice thing is that eventually the 2 models Metro can decide to keep their model intact as it is, or do they want to benefit from the additional resolution north of the river if they want to account for all of that. So there's going to be that decision later on, but at least it's all merged on GitHub, and it can be tracked as to how the model evolves over time. The other benefits of this is that for the Washington context, we get to replace the powertrains and fuels package that Joe mentioned. And so Dan Cody, I'll be knocking on your door here soon enough as we try to get agreement on how we want to represent the Washington expectations for those vehicle sales. An example of a process that we carried out to try to start the scenario planning is that we did a Mentimeter activity. I wasn't there in the room, but we had about 30 folks from a call, and we were able to dive in and ask questions about the types of levers and exogenous uncertainties that they were interested in exploring in their scenario planning process. Some of the things, this was just one example of the local transportation actions, but we explored land use and policy topics as well as those outside exogenous factors. So some of the things that came high priorities were the increased active travel. We saw transit coverage. They were interested in some parking. They were less interested in the congestion fees and tolling type of topics. One things that were exciting to see is that they were interested in exploring the land use density, diversity. They were also interested in exploring some of the exogenous uncertainties, such as the aging of our population. How is that going to affect our travel behavior? And so we do see that transit declines in interest, particularly for older populations. So it's going to change our travel demand. They're interested in exploring some of the uncertainties around autonomous vehicles. We're seeing that increase in I guess, prevalence, or at least it's showing up more in my news feeds more and more about connected and automated vehicles again. So, so those are things that we'll be exploring with them in their scenario planning process. Another shifting a little bit further east is central Indiana. We have two MPOs decided to conduct VisionEval models together. And because they're part of one larger Indianapolis commuter shed, it was really important to do a deep dive. We're using LEHD data on the commuter sheds, to understand how many of those workers, where do they live? And so we had a bunch of analysis that was done, and this shows the metropolitan planning areas on the screen. But what I don't show here on another is that we built the VisionEval model to kind of from my cursor over here all the way over and down. And so a big square around this area so that we were able to capture and try to maximize really the internal capture, the number of folks who both live and work within that model region. It improves the accuracy of the model. It really helps make sure that the policies make sense for those regions. If we're looking at trying to introduce a parking policy in downtown Indiana, we need to know where those folks that are living, because they're going to be the ones paying for that, for example. Same thing with some of the travel demand management programs and travel options. So this is just a reminder, again, when we're setting up these models, that the geography was raised, I think, from Minnesota, as well as I think even, well, Li Ming's research is that the geographies are so essential when we're setting up our travel models. And so doing a deep dive on the commuter sheds is a fundamental part that we do day in and day out when we're setting up and looking at VE, so that we can try to get a better sense of trying to maximize the right geography and the right region. Because as a reminder, this is an econometric model. If it's outside of the model, we ignore it, right? Economics loves to ignore the externalities and those things outside of our area. So if it's not in, it's outside. The last active example that I wanted to showcase was this Baltimore MPO. So a little bit now on the east side of the US. We're in the process of just wrapping up. Still, the servers are running 1,500 model scenarios covering 7.4 million people, 3 million households, 3.5 million workers, 3 M areas. So this includes the metropolitan DC area. It includes getting closer to Harrisburg. I think I'm now forgetting my geography there, but then some of the Baltimore and the Baltimore core downtown. And so we've got 3,077 B zones, and this is a beast of a model. And it took a long time to develop the inputs. The really valuable outside that I wanted to communicate to you all is that the model's performing really well. They validated it against their household travel survey data as well as their ABM insight. It's a TourCast ABM, and the VMT per capita, and even the walking and biking trips and the transit trips are showing reasonable levels. So the model is behaving quite well, given the scale of this thing and the urban intensity, the variations in land uses that we're seeing. So I really came out of this initial build process with really a lot of confidence in VisionEval. So I'm glad to kind of communicate that to you all. The other part of the screen here is this right hand. Many of you might be familiar with the multi-scenario viewer, which was this HTML JavaScript. Ben Stabler, I think you were on the call earlier. He was involved in that original creation with Aditya Gore from my team. And that process is great, but it's a little inflexible. And so what we've created now is that we've created a Tableau version of it. And in this one, you can see the evolution. There's like color coding. There's these check boxes for which measures you want to see in your outputs. And then we're using these pie charts that we're showing the numbers of scenarios that are part of the input process. So we're going to be using this on the 14th and 15th in May in Baltimore with stakeholders to explore these 1,500 scenarios. So it's a very much not a lot of time here to dive into the results, but it's been a really great process so far. Yeah, I'll tell you that later on how long it takes to run those scenarios. As a reminder, this is how this multi-scenario process is set up. This is not for this model. This is for another smaller model, but it basically goes through each of those different scenario categories. Those are those top levers. In this case, we had 5 buckets in Baltimore, and then we had multiple different levels of dimensions. And when you multiply each of the level by the level of change, you get the 1,500. So in this case, we were something like 5, 4, 3, 3, and you multiply that out and it runs every combination of inputs. So lastly, I'm going to turn it over to Tara in a minute, but I'll be presenting at the Tools of the Trade in mid-June. So if anybody's there, it'd be great to connect. We're going to hold a 2.5 hour workshop on VisionEval, where we're going to center, it's going to be kind of bifurcated. First off is talking about how to apply VisionEval for LRTPs, and then it will be the application side where we're going to be using this scenario viewer on the right or something akin to it. We have to deal with licensing and software and whatnot, but we will be exploring the scenario viewers on a handful of examples that we've dialed up. Then we're also really excited to continue to develop the ITHM module. This is the Integrated Transport and Health Impact Modeling Tool. This has been a UK developed process that's been adapted in the US. California developed an R scripted process. To Ted Mansfield, who is now at Streetlight, who left RSG, he really helped us refactor that R code, and we created a module within VisionEval. It benefits from the synthetic population that VisionEval has, and so we're able to get person-level attributes and to estimate avoided premature deaths because of increases in walking and biking and changes in your driving patterns. And so what it really benefits from is a really detailed population sim output. So we're replacing the population synthesizer within VisionEval with the open source population sim module. And this is that the Central Indiana modules are doing this, and that way we're able to roll in the ITHM because it requires that person level details. That VE population synthesis produces only household levels. And so when we need that person level detail, we're using that population sim. So lastly, Tara, I'll turn it over here to you on the beta modules and then carrying it forward. So thanks.
Yeah. So the beta modules I kind of added to Jonathan's slide since a lot of them were actually developed by RSG. That includes a multimodal module, which actually original kernel came through PSU in the research. Prior to their land use work, they had worked on that multimodal that you've heard a bunch about today, building on that built form variables that are available now with that version of the model. Second thing this is RSG has added, we use this in our Oregon transportation plan as a work from home or telework model. Really great to start being able to utilize that and testing scenarios with that. Even more far thinking is a driverless model, looking at, different level 5, just sort of jumping into what if. So a little bit more pie in the sky, but some testing. And then a car share. So we do have car service in the model, but a shared ride service was recently added. So I call these beta modules because they're not part of the standard download, and so they're kind of in other locations that you'd have to download those separately and then call them instead of the traditional modules in VisionEval. So we're still working to kind of get those seamlessly available to folks. But thanks to RSG and PSU a little bit for doing that. Oh, and the other connection I would make is that ITHM work, the health module, because it requires, the beta zones, and in VE state it does not have beta zones. We're actually toying with linking two things here, the land use model, which would maybe synthesize down to the B zones, and then we could apply this module. So anyway, lots of interconnected things here going on. We can move to the next slide, which is just, I'm just so overjoyed here that we are, this is expanded over starting here originally in Oregon in 2012 with Brian Greger building this model, using it on some of our greenhouse gas work, and just expanded here. We've got like over 25 dots and colors, states and localities using the model here. And then I would go further to the next slide. And say, some of those of us have joined into a partnership where we're working with, 9 DOTs and 5 MPOs, where we're, spend a little bit in and out, but since 2018. And so we decided we wanted to pull things together and have been working to shepherd this all along through 2 FHWA pooled fund cycles that were extended and so forth to cover that period. And at this point, given sort of the chaos at the federal level, we are, being told that this is not an option for FHWA to lead this anymore. So we're having to retool a little bit and figure out what our partnership will do to continue the work here. I think that, what you've seen today, there's really a strong thing. This will definitely go on in some form, and we're trying to figure out how we will continue to pool funds and move forward with that continued development and continued sort of shepherding and community peer sharing. So the partnership activities include, administering to get us together to talk community practice at the bottom, but also more technical maintenance of the tool. If an R script or new R version comes out, you need to update that tool. So we're trying to do that maintenance, and Jeremy Raw was mentioned quite a bit in the chat and so forth. He's been our key driver in the car that is the VisionEval pooled fund, and he is retiring as well with these changes a couple years earlier than we thought. But anyway, so we're trying to maintain that level of work and upgrade our models and maintain them here for the community that's broader than the partnership to continue to work. And I'm super excited here, especially to bring in the research realm and connect those dots. That I think the tool has a lot of capabilities that most of the work is done. And if you pull out a piece of it, you can do some research and maybe plug in, like that bike module or land use component. And the rest of the stuff's already kind of there. So great. I see Jeremy responding in the chat as well. Okay, so next slide. Yes, so in addition to the tools of the trade that Jonathan mentioned, we're also been awarded a session at the Modeling Mobility Conference, that Zephyr conference that Chris at the top of the hour mentioned is coming up in September, trying to figure out exactly what this looks like, but a key part of it is to understand why another tool, right? And I think we've seen here today some of the complementary pieces. It's not a replacement for your travel model. It does really other things. And so that would be the focus of this discussion with some applications and panel discussions. All right, that might be wrap up. Yes, and so here I've just, you can't all read these all right now, but this will be part of the information that gets coded on the website of some resources, both at the national level. VisionEval.org is your access to all of those, but I've highlighted the user's guide, the code on GitHub, and then a number of things I've found particularly useful for sort of starting up, a quick understanding of modules and how they work, what inputs can you actually change, and the file summary of all the files if you just want to know those. And then at ODOT, we have a short couple-page flyer, and you can learn more at the TPOW Tools website. With that, I'll wrap it back, send it back to Chris to wrap up here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.